Okay, so are you ready for this? Today, we are diving deep into the Stanford Prison Experiment.
Oh, yeah. This one is legendary.
It really is. Everyone listening has probably heard of it. But what's so fascinating is what it shows us about human nature, right? Like, how much does the situation we're in really affect how we act?
It's definitely a study that's gotten a lot of attention over the years.
For sure. And the crazy thing is, this whole thing was funded by the U.S. Navy.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, they were having some issues in their own naval prisons and wanted to get some insight.
Wow.
I know, right? So it's 1973, and picture this. A mock prison built in the basement of Stanford University. 22 male college students, all considered psychologically healthy, signed up and were randomly assigned to be either guards or prisoners.
So basically, a flip of a coin decided your fate for the next 2 weeks.
Exactly, and they didn't mess around. They wanted this to feel like a real prison experience.
From what I've heard, they really went all out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like they had real police officers go to the prisoners' homes and make actual arrests.
Whoa, way.
Yes, complete with sirens, the whole 9 yards. Then they took them down to the prison, stripped them down, made them go through a delousing procedure, and gave them these like really uncomfortable smocks to wear no underwear or anything. It was all very intentional, to make them feel powerless and stripped of their identities.
I mean, I guess when you're trying to understand the psychology of imprisonment, those kinds of details probably matter a lot.
Yeah, and it's wild how much thought they put into every little thing. On the other side, you had the guards, dressed in those khaki uniforms and mirrored sunglasses. The whole tough guy look.
Yeah, classic symbol of authority.
Right. And they were given whistles, batons. It was all very deliberately chosen to create that power dynamic from the get-go.
I see. So they set the stage visually, but did they actually tell the guards how to behave?
That's a thing. The researchers gave them very few instructions. Like, obviously, they were told to maintain order and prevent escapes, and they were told no physical violence. But other than that, they were basically told to figure it out.
Oh, wow. So it's like they were creating this controlled environment, but then just letting the social dynamics unfold naturally.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so fascinating and unsettling about what happened next. Things escalated incredibly fast.
Yeah, it's almost like they gave the guards the tools, but not the instruction manual, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how quickly things went sideways. Like, at first, they started with these counts where the prisoners had to recite their ID numbers over and over.
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, and it seemed harmless enough at first, just a way to establish a routine or whatever. But pretty quickly, it became this whole other thing.
It's like in any situation where you have one person or group in a position of power over another,
Yeah.
there are always these little power plays, right? Those in control kind of feel it out, seeing how far they can push things.
Yeah, you see that everywhere. And what's interesting here is that the guards weren't explicitly told to make these counts difficult, but that's exactly what they did.
It became this game almost, right?
Totally. They would drag them out for hours, make the prisoners wake up in the middle of the night and repeat their numbers over and over.
Oh, man, that's rough. Sleep deprivation is no joke.
It's like legit torture. It wears you down, Makes
Yeah.
you more willing to just go along with whatever.
Absolutely. It's a tactic that's been used in interrogations in prisons for a reason. It really works.
Yeah, it's kind of scary how quickly these regular college guys latched onto some of those more, well, darker instincts of power.
And you can't forget the impact all this had on the prisoners, too. They went from being these like rebellious, kind of defiant guys to being totally withdrawn and submissive.
Yeah, it's sad when you read about it. They were just totally stripped of their individuality.
There's this one story about the prisoners being offered parole. They could get out of the experiment early.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they had to forfeit all the money they were supposed to get for participating, and most of them chose to stay, even though it meant staying in this environment that was clearly messing with their heads.
It's like they weren't even seeing it as an experiment anymore.
It shows how powerful the situation was. To them, that was their reality.
And get this, even the researchers themselves got swept up in the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, I read about that. They called it going native or something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Going native. Basically, they were so focused on the experiment itself that they kind of lost sight of the bigger picture.
It's like they forgot these were real people with real emotions. They were so caught up in observing and documenting everything that the ethical lines started to get blurry.
It's a good thing they finally brought in someone from outside the experiment,
Yeah.
because she was the one who was finally like, hey guys, we got to shut this down. And thank goodness they did, because just 6 days into what was supposed to be a 2-week study, it was obvious that this simulated prison. Well, it wasn't really simulated anymore. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, like how quickly things fell apart.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? It wasn't like these guys were just a bunch of bad dudes looking for an excuse to be cruel. These are your average college students. Any of us put in that same situation under that kind of pressure, who knows how we would have acted.
That is a chilling thought. It really makes you wonder, like, how much of our behavior is determined by the situation we're in versus, who we think we are.
Right, and that's what makes this experiment so relevant, I think, even all these years later.
So, like, what are some takeaways here? Why should this matter to someone listening right now?
Well, think about it. How often do you see someone's behavior change, even just a little, when they're put in a position of power?
Oh, all the time. Like that boss who suddenly gets a promotion and becomes, well, a little harder to deal with?
Exactly. Or how about online? People say things they'd never say to someone's face when they're hiding behind a screen. It's like that anonymity gives them permission to transform into someone else.
It's like their own little Stanford Prison Experiment, except, with less khaki and fewer fake arrests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it just shows how much our environment, the roles we play, even just like the subtle cues in a situation, can influence how we act, sometimes without us even realizing it.
It's kind of a relief in a way, right? Like maybe we're not stuck with some fixed personality. Maybe we have more agency than we think.
Totally. I mean, it's not like we can just use this as an excuse to be like, oh, it's not my fault, it's this situation. But being aware of these forces is the first step to being able to, resist them, or at least navigate them more consciously.
So what can we actually do with this information?
Well, for one, we can start paying more attention, right? To those moments when we feel our own behavior shifting. Like, what are the triggers?
Yeah.
Where are those power imbalances in our own lives?
And I guess it's not just about recognizing the bad stuff, right? It's also about being more deliberate about creating environments that bring out the best in ourselves and each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, how can we design workplaces, schools, even just our own homes in a way that encourages ethical behavior, that makes people feel empowered?
I love that. So this crazy experiment, it's like a cautionary tale, but also kind of a call to action?
Totally. It reminds us that we all have this capacity for both good and bad. And the situations we find ourselves in, they really matter.
It really makes you think. Well, everyone, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive. And just remember, next time you think you have it all figured out, think again. The power of the situation is always lurking.